All right, welcome everyone. Let's go ahead and get started. We'll pull up the slide deck here. So my name is David Coatney, and today's webinar is on the topic of how MSPs can differentiate their brand. And while this webinar is geared toward managed service providers, you'll find some general tips in here that can be applied to a wide range of different industries. And the question is, with so many competing voices in the MSP space, how do you cut through the noise and differentiate yourself? So today we'll talk about creating a unique value proposition that makes you stand out from your competitors, the advantages of taking a vertical approach to your marketing, and then we'll talk about your branding, your messaging, and how to build authority. But first, let's start with a quick introduction. As I said earlier, my name is David Coatney. I'm the president of MSP Web Solutions. And the QR code on this slide will take you to my calendar if you want to schedule a consultation to talk about your website security as a service, or just your marketing needs. So if you want to book an appointment, you can do so by scanning the QR code, and we'll be happy to help. All right, so starting on the topic of differentiation, I want to begin with creating a unique value proposition. Some people will refer to it as a unique selling proposition. And a unique value proposition is defined as establishing a core essence of a company, product, or service that is distinctive from the competition. And I always liked the phrase, different is better than better. Think about that for a moment. If your pitch to your potential customers is that you're better at X, that's not really a selling point because they expect you to say that. And by the way, your competitors are all saying that too. So to stand out from your competitors, you need something that's different. You need to find a way to be distinctive and unique. And that starts with a competitive audit. So when you're doing a competitive audit, you want to compile a list of your biggest competitors and look at their names, their branding, their mix of products and services that they're offering, the markets that they're targeting, their visualization. How do they look? What's their customer avatar? How do they price themselves? And then once you've done that, the next question you're going to ask yourself is, where is that white space? Is there an area of the market or an opening that you can corner and then outflank those competitors? And how do you take advantage of that? And there's several levers you can look at. Pricing is one, obviously. Are you premium or are you value? If you're in a market where everyone's pitching value, maybe you should be the premium vendor. Service, is your service level, is it more personalized? Is it more technical? What about business size? If all your competitors are focused on trying to be big players in the space and touting these huge corporate clients they have, maybe your unique value proposition is that you're boutique. And when you work with us, you work directly with the founders of the company. What about that mix of products and services? Do you offer more products or are you specialized? Do you focus on one common specific business challenge and try to become the best at that rather than becoming a jack of all trades? Or are you the one-stop shop? What's your rapid market responsiveness look like? Your accomplishment alignment, your tenure, the number of clients that you've helped, your industry recognized expertise. Do you have location exclusivity? Are you the only one in your particular, smaller market? Let's say, for example, you're in a metro with 40 competitors, but in that particular suburb, you're the only one. Okay, when you're dealing with a business in that particular suburb, that's actually a selling point. What about the relationship networks and partners that you work with? Can you offer your customers access to these relationships as a point of difference? Because at that point, you're not just a vendor, you're now a resource. What about your branding? The logo, the color palette, the naming, the layout. How do you visually stand out? Do you look like all of your competitors in that market? Because that's not a good thing. If you walk into a department store and you look on the shelf and you see a bunch of blenders, and every blender is white, but right in the middle you have this one black blender that's going to pop. It's going to visually stand out because it looks different than everything around it. So how can you make yourself look different than your competitors? And this is the most important one, customer targets. It's the most important when it comes to finding a white space. Is there an underserved space that you can target where you can be the specialist in that market? And as a result, you can also hyper target your audience messaging to that vertical. Years ago, when I was a marketing director for an office equipment dealer in Tennessee, I integrated a vertical marketing approach for the sales team to use when pitching office equipment. Whereas their competitors were walking in the door and they were talking about features and speeds, our sales reps were taking a very different approach. One rep would be walking into a healthcare clinic and leading with HIPAA compliance. Another rep would be walking into a law firm and talking about scanning depositions to automated repositories with simple file naming conventions and being able to integrate OCR and quickly access the point in the deposition they need. And in the process, what they were demonstrating was value. They understood their clients' needs and objectives and were catering directly to those needs. Within 2 years, the company's revenues tripled. Vertical marketing works, and it works for a number of reasons. First of all, it establishes credibility, especially if you focus on a vertical. We provide IT services for dentists. We provide cybersecurity solutions for personal injury attorneys. And it's even more powerful if you brand yourself that way, if that identity exists somewhere in your logo or your tagline. Because a healthcare clinic is far more likely to have a conversation with an MSP that brands themselves as a company who focuses on HIPAA compliance than they are with an MSP who brands themselves as a generic local provider. The second thing that it does is it makes it a lot easier for you to increase your knowledge about that industry. It's impossible to know everything about every industry, but by narrowing in on real estate attorneys or dentists, you can learn everything you need to know about what software they're using, how that integrates into their workflow, and what those processes need to look like to become that trusted specialist. What it also allows you to do, though, is it allows you to hyper target your audience in your marketing efforts. Not only in the sense that, you're speaking their language, you're hitting topics that are relevant to them, but you can also join industry associations and groups. You can create marketing campaigns that target these groups. So if you're targeting dentists and you know that there's a meeting of the ADA at this time and place, or there's an American Bar Association meeting here at this time and place, you can set up a geofencing campaign around that building on that day. So anyone who walks into that building with their cell phone, when they leave, they're now going to get retargeted with that type of messaging. And on to branding. A technology company should look the part of a technology company. In other words, modern. People expect their IT vendors to stay up to date with the latest technology because techniques evolve and you don't fight today's malware with yesterday's tools. So when you present an image to consumers in your marketing materials, it doesn't look modern. The message you're sending is, we're not modern. And that's not the right message. And I understand most AT guys are not marketing guys, even though some of them may think they are at times. But just know that if your logo looks like it was developed in the 1980s, that's not going to build trust. If your website has a fixed width design, which was very popular in the early 2000s, that's not going to build trust. Today's websites are built with fluid width designs that adjust to the device. And I have some more bullet points here that pertain to your website. But with that said, I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this particular topic, mainly because I have another webinar planned that dives deeper into this specific topic. But that last point there is going to transition us into the next slide, and that is communicating clearly. You want to consider those first few seconds when somebody visits your website and keep it simple. The first thing your potential customers should see when your website loads is who you are and what you do in a language everybody understands. You can get into specifics somewhere else on the site, We now live in an era where people will scream at their phones if they have to watch a 15-second unskippable ad. If those same people don't know what you do right off the bat, they won't go exploring your website to find out. They'll just leave. Now, there are three common ways you can speak a foreign language to your consumers. The most obvious, I think, that a lot of people think about is jargon. Many of us, myself included, often make the mistake of thinking since we understand our own industry terms, everyone else must too. The studies have shown if the average consumer doesn't clearly understand what you do on the above the fold section on the homepage of your website, they'll leave within mere seconds and never click on another page to find out. This is why your homepage should always be geared to the lowest common denominator and clearly articulate what you do. You should never lead with jargon first. And sometimes, jargon's necessary because there may not be a consumer-friendly synonym. Whenever that's the case, you may need to just expound upon it. Use it, but then summarize it in short and simple terms. The second way you can speak a foreign language is actually more common than the first, and that's just to simply be cryptic or vague. Don't get so caught up in the benefits of what you do that you forget to tell people what you do because then they'll walk away confused. If you were to approach somebody that you just met or you've never met, and you were to introduce yourself to them by saying, "Hi, we can help automate your processes." They're thinking, okay, what processes? What are you talking about? Normally there would be an entire conversation that leads up to that point, right? So the same is true with your website. If that's what you're leading with, they're not going to know what you're talking about if they don't know what you do yet. Clarity creates sales. I knew a printer who had a great tagline. Actually, I've known a couple printers with great taglines. One of them was, "If you can hold it down long enough, we can put a logo on it." And the other was, "We print stuff." Guys, that's actually genius. What you don't want to lead with is something, if you're a printer, like we help organizations maximize ROI through an efficient process of strategic yada, 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 because they don't know what you do and they're going to leave the website. It's okay to say that somewhere on the site. You just don't want to lead with it. Don't make that your banner. Again, it's important that the first thing somebody sees when your site loads is who you are and what you do in a language everybody understands. So if you've ever been to, I'll give an example here. You ever been to a networking event? You know what I'm talking about. Somebody stands up and they give their little pitch and they say, "We're looking to be connected with small business owners." Okay. Who are you thinking of? Nobody, right? Even though you might know 1,000 small business owners, it's too vague. But if that person were to say, "We're looking to be connected to dentists," and you know a dentist, now who are you thinking of? You're thinking of your dentist friend, right? Because clarity creates sales. And the final way you can speak a foreign language is to overwhelm your clients with too much information all at once. It's okay to address it all somewhere on the website, but you don't have to lead with everything because at some point it becomes cacophonous. And I've seen websites that do this where they include this entire paragraph in the opening banner that tries to explain everything away. Again, with a networking analogy, if you've ever seen somebody stand up and give a 60-second commercial where they regurgitate every single service they provide, in the process of listing everything, their listeners walk away with nothing. Instead, it's better to focus on one common specific business challenge. Now, to counteract this, I've had clients that wanted to include 5 slides on the homepage. And while slides are not ideal, if that's what the client wants, we'll do that for them. But I always tell them, look, we can certainly do that. Just keep in mind, nobody's ever going to see your 5th slide. So whatever is most important, that's what you should lead with. And another important part of your brand is your brain psychology. Storytelling is a powerful way to differentiate. Humans make decisions emotionally, and storytelling and symbolism are tools of the emotional part of our brain. I always like the phrase facts tell, but stories sell. In the field of psychology, there's a model that's known as the elaboration likelihood model, and it addresses how people process information along 2 basic routes, what's called the central route and the peripheral route. Industries that rely on impulse buys also rely heavily on the peripheral route, the psychology of colors, patterns, editing pace, sights, sounds. things that require minimal cognitive effort and rely on superficial cues. Central cues, on the other hand, require more consideration, and trust becomes more important. It's the difference between a soda company and a financial advisor. And information processed through central cues are much more likely to be retained in the mid to long term memory. And storytelling is a big central cue. And if done right, it's one that can develop trust. What's the story of your brand? What got you passionate about blank? What's your client's story? How are you able to help this client get from this inefficient mess of a process to where they are today? And what did that journey look like? Storytelling also helps you establish credibility and build authority. And the best story is one that comes from your customers. There was a recent survey that showed 72% of consumers said they trust online reviews as much from strangers as much as personal recommendations from real people they know. Reviews will form an impression, good or bad, about your business that will help determine whether that person decides to conduct business with you or somebody else. And that's why we give our SEO clients a tool that funnels where those reviews go, so that bad reviews go straight to a feedback form that's only seen internally, whereas the good reviews get posted online. And we give our clients the tools to implement those things in the field using things like QR codes, but it still needs to become a part of their active routine where asking for reviews just becomes habit. So let's talk about positioning assets. We've already talked about reviews, but case studies are a great way to showcase how your services have impacted a client. Writing a book for your niche is another great way to establish yourself as an authority and an expert in your field. And you can leverage that book to get speaking engagements. If that's something you're interested in, I've got a great resource for that. I'm happy to make the introduction. Creating a guide for your niche. This is basically the same thing, just scaled down. You can then turn that guide into a video or a keynote presentation, something that you can either present at events, you can upload to YouTube, you can do web-based training and hit up specific topics. Like maybe one topic could be, 5 things every clinic should be doing to ensure HIPAA compliance, or how to build a successful disaster recovery strategy. Or if you are selling UC and VoIP services, ways to enhance your virtual collaboration efforts. Then you could do podcasts and interviews and link to those as well, and creating topical authority through blogging, SEO silos, and link building. All right, on to white labeling as a differentiator. There is something to be said for being a specialist. And if that's your unique value proposition, then you should lean into that. However, there's also something to be said for becoming a resource for your clients beyond that specialty. And that's where bringing in white label partners for the fulfillment can help improve client retention. The reason it impacts retention is because it establishes a moat. If you're tied to not just one, but many of their vital operations, it makes it more difficult to cut that cord because they don't just have one service they would need to replace, they have 3 or 4. And this is why a lot of MSPs have gotten into the VoIP space and are now offering cameras and access controls and a wide range of other services. We even white label our services to MSPs who don't want to leave revenue on the table when they get web design requests, which does happen. And we also white label website security as a service because most of your clients have websites, and website security is something that can easily be added either as an add-on service or as part of a bundle. So just to kind of go back and review here, the most important thing in differentiating yourself is going to be number one, conducting that competitive audit to find out what your competitors are doing. And then number two, asking yourself, where is that white space? How are you different than those competitors? Is it the market that you're targeting? Is it the relationships you offer them access to? Is it the location exclusivity? Are you bigger? Are you smaller? Are you boutique? Are they dealing directly with the founders? What's the pricing? Are you value? Um, are you premium? What's that product mix look like? So finding that white space that differentiates yourself from your competitors, that's going to be the most important thing. All right. Oop, I went a little too far here. All right. So, with that said, um, we're running way ahead of schedule here. So, not a very long webinar today, but we are offering for people who watch this webinar the first month free for anyone who signs up for website security as a service. Just mention you watch this webinar and we'll be happy to take care of that. I'd like to thank you guys for watching. The QR code here is also a link to the calendar. So if you want to talk about anything like web design or SEO, you can schedule a consultation on that link as well. Otherwise, feel free to email me at david@mspwebsolutions.com if you have any questions, and I'll be happy to help. So that's all I have today. Thank you guys so much for watching, and take care.